So as Marie said, it's actually been 4 years that we've been up and running now, so time's flying a little bit quicker. I started the organisation on my own, and having worked in public relations for about 25 years prior to that, I actually worked very closely with Simon Corbett from Jargon PR, who founded Jargon PR, one of the other guys on the call today. He was my intern back in the day, so it goes to show just how long I've been in this game. So I set up the agency with the intention that I wanted to create, as Marie rightly said, an organisation that was the type of place that I wanted to work in, where people could come first, where we could really choose the clients that we worked on, where people were encouraged to just be nice to each other, to play to their strengths, to collaborate, and to be celebrated for what they're good at. That team, this is just some of the UK team before we went out and did some fun and games a month back. But we've now grown, actually from the 36, we've now grown to 40. We're continuing to grow really quickly. So in 4 years, we've gone from 1 person up to 40. So that in itself obviously brings an awful lot of change and challenge, especially for an organisation for whom culture is central. So perhaps if I tell you a little bit about us. We like to think of ourselves as an energetic, multi-award-winning PR agency with offices in London, which is where we founded, in New York and in Sydney. And actually, interestingly, Sydney was brought on about 18 months ago. So that was kind of pretty much just as we were about to go into lockdown. And New York has been set up by a wonderful guy just in the last 6 weeks. And again, all done through COVID. So I've never actually physically met him, which is slightly hilarious when you go into business with somebody on the other side of the world and you've never actually met them. We wanted to make sure that we would do things a little bit differently. So having worked in an array of fabulous international PR agencies, I wanted to create somewhere that was a little bit different, that didn't sell time. Sorry, in the office. I wanted to work somewhere that didn't necessarily sell time, but instead would agree up front what success looked like, and then could deliver against that. And I wanted, more importantly, to create an organisation that was absolutely the type of organisation that I wanted to work in myself. I wanted to create somewhere where all of the team members co-owned the business from the get-go, because I do feel that creates a different dynamic. It creates a different sense of how you engage and how you communicate with one another. I wanted to create somewhere where we've got time to think, and where imagination and clients were celebrated. That was really important to me. And so really thinking about what the culture was and what the value set that I wanted to build in the first instance was the foundations of the business. And so because of that, everything that we've done in terms of how we've structured our approaches, the products and services that we've put into play, how we go through the recruitment process is all wholly aligned to that. So what we have in common all the time are those values. When we go through a filtering process for which client partners that we want to take on board, again, what's central to all of that are those values. And that's really where the name came from. It's kind of like, I wanted to create this land where, kind of paved with gold, where everyone could share in success, this land of milk and honey. So hence the name. What was important, however, is to then help understand and appreciate what those values looked like and how we can prove them. And this is where, for us, award submissions really added a lot of value, because you can't say respect. You can't say respect, and you can't say trust, and you can't say success about yourself. So you have to have others say that about you, which is why actually working through our marketing program and looking for awards that will back that up, Investors in People accreditation being part of that process, that was hugely important to us. As part of that process as well, another accreditation that we chose to go for in the last 2 years is B Corp. I don't know how many of you are au fait with that process. Have any of you heard of the B Corp program? Yeah. Right. Great. So we were actually only the 5th agency to get the accreditation in Europe when we did back in 2019. So it's relatively new. There are now 500 organisations in the UK that have been accredited. And what that does is it looks at something different. So obviously Investors in People is all about how we manage our people, how we create the right environment and culture for people to be able to grow and thrive and succeed within. Whereas B Corp gave us some other infrastructure around ethics, around social responsibility, and it demanded a legal infrastructure for how we were best going to treat people. So it reinforced and sat very comfortably alongside all of the great lessons and feedback we were able to get from Investors in People. So from our culture, there's 6 key values that literally define everything that we do. And that is respect, loyalty, collaboration, energy, passion, and bravery. And the one that we find ourselves talking about probably the most is bravery, especially over the last 18 months where we've been expanding into new countries, where actually in the last 18 months, we've brought in almost half of the team. We've doubled in size from about 18 now to 40. So we've kind of doubled it in size during that time. And bravery has been a big part of that. And really fundamentally within that, it's been creating a culture where it's absolutely fine and encouraged to fail, where people are encouraged to fail and get things wrong, because that way it encourages us to be brave, to not go down the well-trodden routes that we'd had previously. And it also just means that it's okay to try something new, and that the entire team is behind you in terms of supporting what's going on. So then when we do get things wrong, we fail fast and move on. And the way that we've been able to deliver on that, especially over the period where we've been in lockdown, is really drawing things down. So rather than having ongoing marketing programs and ongoing business improvement programs and ongoing professional development programs, what we've done is we've broken everything down into small sprints. So we now have 4 to 6 week sprints that we have different members of the team that are involved in delivering and owning, that we have a very defined goal that we set within that period, and then we charge on and deliver it. And so that way we were able to really make sure that we were achieving all of the goals and short-term goals that we were looking to, that made a big difference. So for example, when we went into the first lockdown, we created a project that we named Project Prosper. And the entire focus on it was to be able to protect everybody's jobs. Now there's 2 options there, right? You can either hunker down and make sure that you're looking after your existing clients, because we're, as a PR agency, that's where our focus is. You're looking after your existing clients, and that you're kind of cutting any kind of other OPEX budgets, such as training, such as marketing, such as further investment. Or you can go the other way and take a braver choice and say, okay, actually, whilst everybody else is potentially slowing down in this period, this is our time to really double down our investment in our people to make sure that they are skilled and confident. It's a time to stand out in the market. So for those that are looking, we can be as obvious as possible, and also to make sure that we've got all of the infrastructure in place that we need for our team, and that they can work comfortably. And we made lots of mistakes in there, so we thought we were really quite good at managing a kind of a flexi team, because like I'm sure many of you, before going into lockdown, we had a number of people who worked remotely, we had a number of people who worked part-time. We had teams already up and running, and we thought, okay, this is going to be great. The reality of moving entirely over was nowhere near as easy as I thought it was going to be in the first instance. And for some of our team members, especially those that are perhaps a little younger and more junior in their career, where they were living in London and in shared housing, they perhaps didn't have a place other than their bedroom to set up, which was difficult. But then there's other practicalities beyond that. So for example, we had a number of the team, one of the members of the team was living in a house with 4 other young professionals, and they had a very small kitchen, and in their kitchen they had a fridge with just a small freezer section. Now when you're all stuck in home and having to kind of plan meals out, and there's 5 of you, that doesn't work. So there was all sorts of things that we were doing, not just making sure that we were sending kind of chairs and desks and computers out to people so that they had that, but also sending out freezers and other such things that would enable our teams to comfortably work from home. So again, it's kind of putting their needs and wants and enabling them to set up that was really important. So again, it's kind of thinking about problems from a people-centric perspective was the way that we looked at all of the challenges as we were bringing it on. We then spent an enormous amount of time, as I'm sure all of you have as well, really thinking about wellness, and that was kind of social wellness in terms of people feeling isolated and what we could do about that, infrastructures that we could put in place, initiatives that we could put in place, points of connection that we could put in place, financial wellness, making sure that, again, people felt that they had some choices. We put in place a whole host of other support to allow people to have greater financial wellness in terms of being able to offer interest-free loans for anybody that was moving house or thinking of moving house, well, for anybody, but you know, it was used very often by people moving house and moving in and around right across the country. We upped the pension contributions. We upped our healthcare offer to ensure that extended further into mental well-being. There was a whole initiative where we then moved from having just a small number of mental health first aiders into having a rolling program where all the team would be trained on mental health first aid. And now we haven't got through the whole team yet. That's a staggered program that's continuing to be run out. And then what we tried to do as well is make sure that we then created, that we were able to kind of spotlight and create insights and celebrations of each team member as an individual, so that we had we had Meet the Human programs running that we would have every Wednesday, where people would get involved and kind of talk about themselves and their passions and their commitments that they would share with the rest of the team, which is a great way of helping us feel connected without talking about work. It also then meant that on the back of that, there were some actions that we tried to deliver to make sure that we weren't just sharing and then it was dissipating. We then brought that into people, because again, we work in marketing, so we then brought that into people's kind of their own brand and encouraged people to write about it or get engaged. So for example, one of our client managers is a bisexual activist, and he was already writing for Attitude magazine, and so we then supported him to take on greater role in his activism work. He set up a podcast, which then actually I'm delighted to say this year he's been celebrated in the Pride Power List 100 for being of true influence in that space. That's just one example. We then found with other people, they were looking to release more of their creativity. It was something that they really enjoyed doing. And so then there was a whole series of kind of online creative classroom situations that person then led on. So there was a number of initiatives where we would try to get deeper into each individual within the team. And don't forget, being a small team of 40, that's much, much easier to do. And then play that back and then encourage people to bring their whole self to work, even though they weren't actually physically coming into work, so that we can, so that they felt very connected to the company. So would you mind, sorry. And that really worked out very nicely. Another thing that we do, that we try to make sure that we're constantly checking ourselves, and again, this came from the really helpful ongoing counsel that we continue to get from Javier, who is our Investors in People point person. So one of the things that he was helping us is to really understand how we can improve our benchmarking scores and what we should be measuring. And we noticed that there are, that actually our industry within the PR space and within marketing and comms broadly, actually is pretty good at picking out some of these elements, is pretty good at really looking at gender pay gap reporting, at looking at ethnicity pay gap reporting. They're pretty good at running industry-wide initiatives around mentorship. around business improvement, and the team is actively engaged to be very involved in all of that. We also have an internal Hive happiness. Milk and Honey, we play on bees a lot, so we refer to ourselves as a happy hive. And I think also the language we use is important as well, just reinforcing the idea that happy hive is exactly what we're aiming for. And so that was very helpful. So these surveys go out quarterly, and they're completely anonymous. And what's helpful about that is that we benchmark against ourselves, but we also benchmark against our industry, and we benchmark against the broader investors and people community to just see how we're doing on that front. And then for everything where we notice that we could do better, or we feel that we're in a position where we need to put more energy or thought, then we create a sprint around that. A team then volunteers, who, for whomever that particular sprint speaks to, people then volunteer. We've then got a 4 to 6 week window to make sure that we're driving things forward. And because of that approach, because of that sprint approach, then we get an awful lot done. As Marie very kindly pointed out, we just went through our Investors in People journey actually in May of last year. Again, part of what we wanted to do as we went into lockdown was really make sure that we were looking after the team and being accredited by Investors in People, and make sure that we were checking in what good really looks like beyond our own industry was something that was very, very important to us. Working closely with Javier, we were able to go through that process in just over 2 weeks. So that was really wonderful. So again, everybody was very, very energized. The Investors in People team were very, very energized at really helping us focus and deliver against the key elements that make up the program, but also above and beyond that, to really understand what we were trying to achieve as a business, what was important to us, what was important to different team members, so that we could deliver on that. We then share that information in what we call our People Purpose Planet report, which we publish on the website and push out broader every year, where we kind of call ourselves out for what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong. And we report on satisfaction, we report on ethnicity and gender diversity, on neurodiversity. We report on behaviours and attitudes. We report on pay gaps, on career development opportunity. And so I think, again, making sure that we're reporting the good, the bad and the ugly is important to us, because it drives us in continuing to do better. We try to make sure as well that that actually, whilst we've kind of doubled the team over the last year, we try to make sure that we're not just thinking about our existing team and perhaps the gaps of what we need as a business, but we're also thinking about the next generation of talent that's coming into our industry. Because one of the things that's happened in the last year within marketing, communications and PR in particular is that a lot of graduate recruitment programs, a lot of internships, a lot of placements have all kind of been lost to the wayside, as people haven't across the board necessarily been investing in their teams. I'm delighted to say we're coming out the other side of that now, and as an industry and indeed as a nation, there's a lot more investment going in. But from that perspective, we wanted to make sure that we were continuing to deliver on that. But there's a number of us in our all-female board that are parents, and I think we just felt very strongly that we needed to make sure that we were creating opportunities. So I'm delighted to say that we've done that. We've continued to run internship programs throughout the last year, and we've got a 100% conversion rate on our interns into full-time members of the team. Right now, we've got we've got a number of we've got a couple of newly freshly minted students, one of which who is just about to go off to university and is doing a 3-month placement with us over the summer, and the second of which has just finished his A-levels and has come to join us in an operational role. And this is the first time we've actually created a role for that's kind of a non-graduate recruitment entry, and that's been really interesting for us. And so there's lots of learnings that we've brought along the way there. But again, as the business develops, we're able to be a little bit more structured on that front. It's also meant that we've had to think about things a little bit differently. And so as part of both thinking about how we nurture the careers of those that we have within the organization, and again, we've tried to move away from linear progression to be able to have quite an organic progression so that we create personal professional development plans for each individual rather than bespoke career plans. So, sorry, we've created bespoke career plans. So, so that way round, actually, what that has meant is that we've been able to kind of adapt and really ebb and flow with the new type of talent we've brought in. So three people that we've brought in the last year have come in, have been in their 50s, and they want something different. So again, they've all had very successful careers, but they want different things. So one has come in as a head of content, incredibly capable individual, but didn't want to get involved in line management anymore. And so we were able to kind of sculpt a particular role for him. Another lady has come in and has come from a very a hugely high achieving executive assistant background, wanted to be able to take on more ownership and get involved from a group level. So she's taking on a head of operations role. Another one of our senior managers has had a particular focus on digital and grown out and developed her skills further there. So we've been able to create a head of discovery role. So again, we're kind of creating bespoke roles for individuals that's aligned with where they want to take their own career. We're also being able to swap things out. So mixing people up a little bit so that they don't feel stale. And so especially now as people are beginning to come back into the office, and again, that's done purely on a comfort level. So what we've said to the team is we'd like you, once we're allowed to, and obviously now we are allowed to, as you're comfortable, we'd like you to be in more than you're out. Just because what we found is as a creative community, having people in together is so much easier. As I'm sure you've all discovered, you have that kind of 1 or half a degree of separation when you started working from home 18 months ago. You come back together and have a face-to-face communication, and you realize that actually you've kind of drifted off path quite considerably. And so we're making sure that we're creating those opportunities to have bespoke conversations around where we think we are right now, where we'd like to be, not just in what we're delivering for the business, but what we're delivering for clients and where we are specifically on everyone's own kind of personal career journey. And that's been really important to us. We've also gone out and publicly said that we would like to play an active role in nurturing the development and careers of a more diverse community. So we've made a commitment to assist 250 people from diverse backgrounds into careers in public relations by 2025. Now, clearly, we're not going to go out and recruit 250 people ourselves. So there's a whole host of activities that we're getting involved with, both with the government and indeed with fellow agencies and indeed with our trade body to play an active role in enabling that. And I think that connection to something that's bigger than just our own organisation has been another key driver in helping people to embed the culture themselves, because what they're then going out and doing is they're representing the brand, talking about it, which again reinforces and re-embeds that position in their own mind. From a diversity and inclusion perspective, we've worked on this. We started a sprint around this around the same time as we started a sprint for getting involved with investors and people. So it was about 18 months or so ago, and on the belief that diversity really does make us stronger. So when we've got some big things that we need to work around. We've in the UK and Australia, we've got 100% female boards, which is obviously not very diverse at all. So we need to absolutely work on that. We're beginning to do better on that front, but it's something that we've actively got to put our minds towards. Delighted to say that we don't have any gender pay gap, despite the fact that we've got an entirely UK and Australian female board. We have a more male board out in North America, and a lot of our heads of and directors are men. Not all of our employees have a degree level qualification, and as I say, that's a relatively new development. It's only really in the last year that we've started to open up there and really think about how we can level the playing field in terms of creating opportunities. 32% of our employees identify as BAME, 3%, it's gone down actually, it was 15% last year, but a couple of our team members that we lost over the last year happen to be more exclusively from the LGBTQ plus community. I don't think there's any particular reason for that. I just think that that we were a smaller number of people then. As I say, we were half the size we were, and 3 of the individuals that left had been with us for 2+ years, and so I think it was just time more than anything else. I'm delighted to say that 23% of our team, myself included, consider themselves to be neurodiverse, and just under a third of the team are either under 22 or over 50, with 35% of the team having a primary or secondary caring responsibility. So again, that idea of wanting to nurture, that idea of caring for people and extending that into their professional lives is kind of very much embedded in the team. We've also, to further our ambition to ensure that everybody within the organisation is a co-owner within the business, we've invested, and we're just finalising this at the moment, it's due for completion at the end of this month, but we're moving from an LLP, from a limited liability partnership structure, to an EOT, which is an employee ownership trust. And again, that all fits very much into the ambition that we set for ourselves, in line with the assistance of investors and people, and Javier in particular. So one of the things, so what that means is an employee ownership trust effectively owns the majority, it has to be 51+% of a business that is put into and held in a trust for the employees. And so as of the end of this month, 55% of the business will be owned by the employees. So I then become a minority shareholder, and the team become a majority shareholder. There's then an employee council that advises the trustees on how the business should be guided and structured. Of course, the leadership team remains in play, but it has to have things signed off by the trustees, and the trustees are made up by an independent, one of our leadership team, which is our finance director, and one of the employees from the employee council. And so they're now my direct boss, which is another really great safety net and kind of checking mechanism to ensure that we're all being held true to the idea that we are an employee and people first organization, and every decision that is made is in the best interest of all of the people, not of the few. So that was a really important evolution for us, and a process, a legal process that we're just going through right now. Coming back to the point that I think from a culture perspective, what makes the culture is not just doing your job. Obviously, feeling connected to an organization and feeling connected to a culture is by identifying what exactly that is, what it stands for. That starts with the value, it goes on into the mission and the vision, which we kind of check in, and as a team, we work out what exactly we mean by that. But then above and beyond that, it's being bigger than itself. And so one of the things that we do is that we go out and we make pledges to the industry as a business, what we want to do to help be a good business, you know, that's doing well for the environment, for its people, for its community, and ultimately doing no harm to the planet. And so there's 5 pledges that we've made in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The first of which is to invest 5% of team time in volunteer projects and fundraising initiatives. And again, we have a sprint team that works on that, that decides what it is that they want to volunteering activities they want to get involved in, what fundraising activities they want to deliver, what goals we want to set ourselves in terms of money raised or activities delivered. And then they work exclusively on that. So again, there's a lot of empowerment and ownership that sits within the team that the leadership team is not involved in at all. And again, I feel that that's been a huge value of connecting with the team. A second of which is to increase team ownership to a third by the end of this year. And we're doing that through the EOT. Oh, I didn't put the other ones in there. And then there's a third is that to enable 250 people from diverse backgrounds into PR careers by 2025. So again, we're trying to do some elements that are how we're going to behave, some elements for what we want to achieve as a team, and then some elements that are outside of our organization that demonstrates us being a good business. And I'm delighted to say, again, as Marie said, I think working very closely with Javier and understanding what is being measured within the investors in people community, where we stand from the benchmarking perspective, and then putting some improvement plans in place and demonstrating how we deliver that. I think the demonstration was key for us. We were able to put ourselves forward for the awards last year, despite that we only just got accredited a couple of months before, and delighted to say that that we won Employer of the Year for small business. So that was hugely exciting. But more importantly, we were able to then look at what the more established of you, what you were doing really well, and what benchmark reports we were able to get out of the back of that, so that we can look at where that we can build that continual improvement. So that has been enormously helpful. Again, winning awards for us is, whilst it's always lovely to have some to fill up the trophy cabinet, actually it's a really good way for us to reinforce that we are what we say we are, and so that's how we tend to use it. As I mentioned, we are B Corp accredited. We got our accreditation 2 years ago, and again, that is another program where you're encouraged to continuously improve. And so I'm delighted to say that actually last week we won Best in the World honoree, where because we've been able to double our score in the 2 years since we were accredited. So again, that continual improvement is really key to how we continue to keep people embedded and engaged in the culture of our organization. Go through too much of that. As I say, we produce our People Purpose Planet report, which is a 20-page document that really kind of goes into everything that we've done, what we're doing, what we need to improve, and how we need to get there. So by all means, if you're interested, please go and have a look at our website, milkandhoneypr.com.